I was 14 freshman year, and this is the only time in my life I've ever actually opened the moving vehicle door and thought seriously about jumping. I want to tell it exactly how it happened, because when I've told people before, they assume I'm exaggerating for effect, and I promise I'm not. Our regular bus driver, Ms. Okafor, had been out for about a week with what the district called a family emergency, and we'd had a rotating cast of substitutes filling in. Most of them were fine, a little unfamiliar with the route, nothing alarming. On a Thursday in February, a new one showed up, a man, older, who didn't introduce himself, which the other subs had all done automatically. Route 14 picks up about 30 kids across 4 stops before the elementary loop, then does the middle and high school drop-off last. I was usually one of the last off, stop 26, about 4 minutes from home. The first thing that felt off was small enough that I almost didn't register it. He skipped the second stop. Not by much, maybe drove 20 feet past the sign before stopping, but 3 kids who normally got on there had to jog to catch up, and he didn't say anything about it, no announcement, no apology over the little speaker system Ms. Okafor always used. I noticed he kept checking the mirror that shows the inside of the bus, more than normal, lingering on it in a way that felt different from a driver just doing a head count. By the time we got through the elementary stops and dropped those kids, it was just middle and high schoolers left, maybe 11 of us. That's when he took a turn onto a street that wasn't part of the route. I know that road. I'd been down it in a car with my dad. It runs along the backside of an industrial park before eventually connecting back to the main road. A longer way to get anywhere, not a shortcut by any measure. A girl near the front, I didn't know her name then, asked him if he was going the right way. He said something like, "Road work, taking a detour," in a flat voice that didn't match the fact that there was no road work, no cones, no signs, nothing. I want to be clear that up to this point I was nervous, but still telling myself there was probably an explanation. What changed that was when he pulled into a mostly empty lot behind one of the industrial buildings, put the bus in park, and just sat there. Engine running, doors closed, not saying anything, not looking back at us, just sitting with both hands on the wheel like he was thinking about something. Kids started asking questions, quiet at first, then louder. Why are we stopped? What's going on? He didn't answer any of it. A boy near the back, a junior named Ellis, who I only vaguely knew, stood up and started walking toward the front, and the driver's head snapped toward the mirror fast enough that Ellis actually stopped walking and just stood in the aisle. That's when I moved to the emergency exit at the back, the kind with the red handle and the buzzer, and I wasn't the only one thinking it. A few other kids had shifted toward it too, without any of us really coordinating, just that shared instinct kicking in at the same time. I don't know exactly what would have happened next, because that's when another car pulled into the lot. Not fast, not dramatic, just a regular car, and the driver of the bus visibly reacted to it, checked the mirror again, and a second later put the bus back in drive and pulled out of the lot. The way we'd come in, back toward the main road, like whatever he'd been about to do or think about doing, had just gotten interrupted by having a witness. He dropped every remaining kid at their correct stops after that. No more detours, no more sitting in the mirror, business as usual, like the previous 10 minutes hadn't happened at all. When I got home, I told my parents everything, and they called the school immediately, then the district transportation office, then eventually the police once they heard the part about the industrial lot. It turned out he wasn't actually cleared through the district's normal substitute pool. He'd been brought on through a staffing agency the district used when they were short, and the paperwork verifying his background check hadn't fully gone through yet. Something about a delay between systems that nobody had caught before putting him behind the wheel of a bus full of kids that morning. He never drove for the district again, but as far as I know, because we followed up more than once, he was never charged with anything either, since technically he hadn't touched anyone, hadn't said anything explicitly threatening, just taken an unauthorized detour and sat in an empty lot for what security footage from a nearby building later clocked at almost 6 minutes. There's a detail I left out that my dad found out weeks later, when he pushed the district for more than the vague statement they kept giving us. He got a call from someone in transportation, off the record, who mentioned that the staffing agency's file on the driver listed a home address that turned out to be a closed storage facility, not an actual residence, and a phone number that had been disconnected before the district even finished the paperwork to bring him on. Nobody could say who he actually was, beyond the name printed on his application, and the agency, when pressed, admitted they'd never independently verified it before sending him out on a route. That's the part that changed how I understood the whole morning. It wasn't just a driver who took a wrong turn and panicked when someone pulled into the lot. It was someone who, as far as anyone could tell, wasn't really who he said he was in the first place, driving a bus full of kids under a name that may not have even belonged to him, for reasons nobody was ever able to explain to my parents, to the district, or to me. 6 minutes doesn't sound like much until you sat through it not knowing what happens at the end of it. Ellis and I ended up in a couple classes together the next year, and neither of us ever really talked about it beyond confirming with each other that yes, that happened, yes, it was as bad as we both remembered, because somehow having someone else who was there made it feel real in a way that telling adults never quite did. They believed us. They just couldn't ever explain why, and neither could I. To this day, I still watch the driver's mirror on any bus I get on, out of habit, checking who's looking back and how long they linger there. My mom still asks the front office, every single year at back-to-school night, exactly how substitute drivers get cleared, and every single year she gets a slightly different answer, which somehow bothers me more than if they just admitted they didn't fully know either. I taught 7th grade math for 3 years at a school I'm not going to name, because there's still an open file on this and I don't want to mess with that. I'm telling this the way I'd tell a police officer, plain, because the version with all the, and then I heard a noise, stuff isn't what scared me. What scared me was how normal it all looked at first. It started with the thermostat. Room 11-8, my room, kept dropping to 62 overnight, even though the building schedule had it locked at 68. Facilities came out twice, said the unit was fine, said maybe a sensor glitch. I believed them because there was no reason not to. Then supplies started going missing. Not big things. A box of granola bars I kept in my bottom drawer for kids who came in hungry. A phone charger. A hoodie I'd left on the back of my chair on a Thursday, gone by Friday morning. I told myself I was losing my mind a little, the way you do in October when the semester's grinding you down. The thing that actually made me stop and think happened on a Tuesday. I stayed late, maybe 6:40, grading in an empty building except for the night janitor 2 floors up. I went to the supply closet at the end of the hall to grab more paper towels, and the light was already on. I remember standing there for a second thinking, that's weird, I didn't leave that on, and then noticing the smell, not a school smell. Body odor and something like old fast food, thick enough that I actually took a step back into the hallway. I didn't go in. I don't know why. Some part of my brain just said don't, and I listened to it. I called the front office the next morning and asked if maintenance had anyone working nights in that closet. They said no. I want to be honest. I almost let it go because nothing had actually threatened me, and adults don't love reporting something they can't fully explain. What changed my mind was a kid in my 3rd period, a quiet boy named Dominic, staying back after class to ask if I'd seen the guy in the ceiling. I asked him what he meant, trying to keep my voice normal. He said a couple weeks earlier, during an assembly when the gym was empty, he'd snuck out to avoid a kid who was messing with him and gone to sit in the equipment room off the gym, the one with the drop ceiling tiles. He said one of the tiles was pushed up wrong, and when he looked up into the gap, there was a sleeping bag up there and a duffel bag, and he saw a man's face looking back down at him before he ran. He hadn't told anyone because he thought people would think he made it up to skip the assembly. I reported it that day, in writing, to my principal, and asked that maintenance check the crawl space above the gym before anyone dismissed it. I was told they'd look into it, which is the phrase people use when they don't want to deal with something yet. Nothing happened for 5 days. I checked the supply closet every morning out of habit, and it looked untouched. I started to think maybe Dominic really had exaggerated. Maybe I'd built a story out of a broken thermostat and a missing hoodie. Then on a Thursday night, I forgot my laptop charger and drove back to the school around 9 after dark, using my key card to get in through the side door by the gym. The halls were off, just the emergency lighting, and it's a different building at night. You don't realize how different until you're standing in it alone. I heard footsteps above me, directly above me, in the crawl space that runs along that whole wing, moving at the same pace I was walking, the exact way footsteps in an attic sound when someone's trying not to be heard and failing. I didn't run, because running felt like the thing that would make it chase me. I walked, fast, normal fast, back to the side door, and I didn't look up again even though every part of me wanted to. I called the non-emergency police line from my car in the parking lot, and 2 officers met me there within 15 minutes. They went through the building with the night janitor, who, by the way, looked more scared than I did once he understood what was happening. And up in that crawl space above the gym equipment room, they found exactly what Dominic described. A sleeping bag. Food wrappers, a lot of them, going back what an officer guessed was weeks based on how they degraded. A duffel bag with clothes, some of which the officer noted were kid sizes, and my hoodie folded on top of it like it had been kept on purpose. They never found the person. There was a gap in the crawl space near the old boiler room that led out into a service corridor with an exterior door that had a broken lock nobody had reported. Whoever it was had a head start of at least 15 minutes by the time officers got up there, maybe more, and the building backs onto woods that go on for a while before hitting the next neighborhood. The district changed every exterior lock that week and added a night security patrol, 6 months too late for my comfort. I asked more than once why the sleeping bag and food had been allowed to sit up there for what sounded like weeks before anyone acted on what a 12-year-old told his math teacher, and I never got a real answer, just some version of, "We take all reports seriously," which by then meant nothing to me. One more detail I left out because it took me weeks to admit it mattered. When the officers pulled everything down from the crawl space, they laid it out on a tarp in the gym to photograph before bagging it as evidence. Sitting next to the duffel bag was a spiral notebook, water damaged, most of the pages stuck together. One officer flipped through a few loose ones with a gloved hand, mostly out of habit, and stopped on a page that had a rough class schedule written on it. My schedule. Room numbers, period times, even a little note next to 4th period that just said, "Leaves door open." I do leave my door propped during 4th period every day for a kid who has trouble with the handle. Nobody outside that classroom would know that unless they'd watched it happen more than once. The officer didn't make a big deal of it, just bagged it with everything else, but I saw his face change for a second, and that was enough for me. It wasn't random. Whoever it was had picked me specifically to study, and I had gone weeks assuming a broken thermostat was the strangest thing happening in my own classroom. I quit at the end of that year. Not dramatically, I just didn't renew my contract. I think about Dominic sometimes, about how close he came to just not telling anyone, and about the fact that whoever was living in that ceiling had been close enough, for however long, to know exactly which drawer I kept snacks in and exactly which chair I hung my hoodie on. That's the part I can't get past. Not that someone was there, that they'd clearly been paying attention to me specifically, long before I ever noticed them back. This happened my junior year, and I still walk to my car in parking lots a certain way because of it, like scanning between rows is just automatic now. I'm not going to pretend I have this fully figured out, because I don't. Nobody was ever arrested. I'm just telling you what I actually experienced, in order, the way it happened. I used to walk home from school, about 1.5 miles, because I didn't have a car yet, and the bus route got cut that year. Same route every day, down Farron, cut through the strip mall parking lot, then 2 blocks to my street. I'd done it since September without thinking twice. End of October, I started noticing a gray sedan. Not every day, maybe 3 times a week, parked at the far end of the strip mall lot, engine running, nobody visibly doing anything. The first couple times I didn't think anything of it. People sit in cars. That's not a crime. What made me actually start paying attention was that I saw the same car, same spot, on a Tuesday and then again the following Tuesday, and both times I noticed it, it pulled out about 90 seconds after I passed. I told my friend Bree about it, and she said I was being paranoid, that it was probably someone picking up a shift at one of the stores. I wanted to believe that. I mostly did, until the first note. It was under my windshield wiper, except I didn't have a car, so it was actually tucked into the strap of my backpack, which meant someone had gotten close enough to touch me without me noticing, on a crowded sidewalk, in daylight. Folded paper, no envelope. It said, "You have a nice walk. Blue jacket looks good on you." I was wearing a blue jacket that day. I hadn't worn it before that week. I didn't tell my parents right away, which I regret, but I want to be honest about that because I think a lot of people don't tell anyone at first out of some instinct that it'll sound crazy or that you'll get in trouble for something. I told my mom 4 days later, after a second note showed up in my backpack, this one just saying, "Almost said hi today." We went to the police that same afternoon. The officer was kind but pretty blunt, said without a license plate, a face, or a direct threat, there wasn't much they could open a case on, but he took a report and told me to vary my route, which felt like such a small answer to something that had made my hands shake reading 2 folded pieces of paper. I started getting rides from my mom after that, or from Bree's older brother when he could do it. For almost 3 weeks, nothing happened, and I actually started to relax, started thinking maybe it had just been some one-off creep who moved on. Then in November, walking out to Bree's brother's car in the school lot after we stayed late for a group project, I saw the gray sedan again, 3 spots down from us, engine off this time, someone sitting in the driver's seat with a hood up. Bree's brother, his name's Colton, noticed me freeze and asked what was wrong. I told him. He didn't hesitate, walked straight toward the car, which honestly scared me more than the car did, and the second he got close, it started up and pulled out fast enough that it clipped the curb on the way out of the lot. He got 3 letters of the plate before it turned onto the main road. 3 letters. Not enough for police to run anything definitively, but enough that when I gave it to the officer along with a rough description Colton gave, tall, thin build, dark hoodie, they said they'd flag it. Here's the part that still gets me. 2 days after that, a woman 2 streets over from mine reported someone matching that description trying door handles on parked cars around 10 at night, and when police responded, they found a gray sedan partially matching ours parked around the corner, empty, plates that didn't match what Colton saw, which the officer told my mom probably meant swapped plates, which is its own unsettling thing to learn. A stranger might be doing over you. Nobody was ever caught. The notes stopped completely after the parking lot incident, like whoever it was clearly understood they'd been seen up close and decided that was too much risk. I finished out junior year getting rides everywhere, no exceptions, and by senior year I'd talked myself into a version of normal again, mostly because I had to. I still have both notes. My mom wanted to throw them out, and I wouldn't let her. I don't totally know why. Maybe because it felt like proof that I wasn't crazy, that something really had been happening, and I hadn't just made a story out of nothing the way people kept implying, even gently, even the officer a little. I keep them in an old shoebox with report cards and ticket stubs, and every so often I take them out and reread the handwriting, small and careful, almost neat, like whoever wrote them had taken real time with it instead of scrawling something in a rush. There's one more thing I only found out about a year later, from Bree, who apparently hadn't wanted to worry me at the time. A few weeks after everything stopped, she'd been walking her dog around 8 at night and noticed the same gray sedan, or one close enough to make her stomach drop, parked at the end of my street instead of near the strip mall. She said she stood there for a second trying to talk herself into believing it was a coincidence, a neighbor's car, anything but what it looked like, and by the time she worked up the nerve to walk closer and check the plate, it pulled away, calm, unhurried, like whoever was driving knew exactly how long they could sit there before someone noticed. She never told me because the notes had already stopped by then and she didn't want to restart something that seemed to be over. I understand why she made that choice, but finding out a full year later that the car had been sitting at the end of my actual street, not just the route I used to walk, changed how I think about the whole thing. It meant whoever it was had learned exactly where I lived at some point and had simply decided, for reasons I will never know, to stop showing themselves to me directly. What actually keeps me up sometimes isn't the car or the notes, it's the timing. Both notes showed up on days I'd changed something small about my routine, a different jacket, a different time I left because of an assembly running late. Whoever it was hadn't just been watching the route. They'd been watching me specifically closely enough to notice small changes and comment on them like it was flattering instead of terrifying. I think about that a lot more than I think about the car.